Shvi'is Perik Yud Mishnah Aleph. So just a small introduction to the Perik. So in addition to the Hilchos Shmita that relate to agriculture and the land, the Torah states that all loans are to be cancelled at the end of Shemitah. If a person lends money before or during Shemitah, he must cancel the loan at the end of Shemitah and may not later demand repayment. This is known as Shemitah's Ksafim, which translates to the cancellation of loans. And this is what the Perik is going to discuss. The Mishnah begins with the types of loans that are cancelled. Shvi'is mishametes is hamilva. Shemitah cancels every loan, b'shtar v'shalei b'shtar, whether it was recorded in a document that includes a lien on the borrower's land, which means that a hold placed on the borrower's land which gives the lender the right to take the land if the loan is not repaid, or not recorded in a document with a lien, and even if it was a verbal loan that was not recorded at all. So a loan, even without a star, is considered a halva. Hakofas hachanus eina mishametes. Debt for items bought on credit in a shop is not cancelled because it is not a loan. Shemitah cancels only loans and not other forms of debt, not other forms of chayiv. This is learned from a pasuk in the Torah. Although technically shop credit can be viewed as though the storekeeper extends money to the customer in order to enable him to make the purchase, this transaction is not considered a loan. It's simply regarded as though the sale is not complete until the customer pays for his purchase. However, if he converted the debt into a loan, that is, the shopkeeper calculated the total with the customer and now views the debt as a loan, it is cancelled. Once the shopkeeper calculates the total owed with the customer, the credit is ended and the money is due. If the shopkeeper allows the customer to delay paying, it's as if he agrees to lend him the money. Rabbi Yehuda says, Harishan Meshamet. Each time a customer makes a new purchase, his earlier debt is automatically converted to a loan. It is improper for a customer to make a new purchase before paying up the previous balance. Thus, if the shopkeeper allows the customer to do so, it is as if the shopkeeper agrees to lend the customer the amount of the earlier balance. And therefore, the former balance is cancelled by Shemitah. Schar sachir eina mishamet. Wages owed to a hire worker are not cancelled because they are not a loan. V'masoi milva hareza mishamet. But if he converted the debt into a loan, it is cancelled. Just like we mentioned before, that once the shopkeeper calculates the total owed with the customer, the credit is ended and the money is due. If the shopkeeper allows the customer to delay paying, it is as if he agrees to lend him the money. So too, the worker calculated the total that he is owed and now views the debt as a loan rather than as payment for a job. Rabbi Yossi says, Kol malacha shepesekes b'shvi'is mishametes. Wages owed for any work that must stop during Shemitah, such as plowing or harvesting, is cancelled. If this worker's craft is forbidden during Shemitah, he will not be hired again for a while. So it is time for him to demand payment. If he does not, it is as if he agreed to lend the employer the money. Thus, it is viewed as a loan and is cancelled. But wages owed for work that do not have to stop during Shemitah are not cancelled, since the reason the worker does not demand payment is because he expects to be hired again soon. Thus, the chayiv is not considered a loan. Mishnah Beis. Hashechet es a par of a chilka of Rosh Hashanah. Let's give a little introduction to this Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses a case of debt incurred on Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the new year that follows Shemitah. So each month of the Jewish calendar coincides with the cycle of the moon. Since the cycle of the moon lasts for about 29.5 days, some months have 29 days, and some months have 30 days. This means that the first day of a month, Rosh Chodesh, can either fall on the 30th day after the start of the previous month, or on the 31st day. In earlier times, this was decided by Bezdin, based on when reliable Edom saw the new moon. After they decided the day of Rosh Chodesh, the Bezdin would send out shluchim to inform everyone which day was Rosh Chodesh, and the people would then know when to observe the Yom Tovim of that month. The Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah, however, posed a problem. Rosh Hashanah always falls out on the first day of Chodesh Tishrei, but no one would know which day was the first of Tishrei until Bezdin decided, which may have been on the afternoon of that exact day. When should Rosh Hashanah be observed? To resolve this dilemma, the 30th day after the month of Chodesh Elul was always observed as Rosh Hashanah because it was likely that it had been declared the first of Tishrei. It's a big shmuz in Masechta Rosh Hashanah also. If the court determined that if Bezdin decided that Elul had 30 days, it emerged that that day was technically part of Elul, and the next day, which was in fact the first day of Tishrei, was again observed as Rosh Hashanah. In this case, in the Mishnah, a group of people bought a cow for the purpose of dividing its meat for the festival, for Yom Tov. One of the people paid for it and shechted it, and the other will owe him for the meat once they receive their portion. So Hashaychet as a par of a chilka Rosh Hashanah. someone shechted a cow at the end of Shemitah and divided it up among a group of people on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which is 30 days after Elul started. If the Beis Din decided that the month of Elul was extended, meaning it lasted for 30 days, the chayv for the meat is cancelled. The people who receive the meat do not have to pay for it. Since Elul has 30 days, the first day of Rosh Hashanah was really the 30th day of Elul, and thus part of Shemitah. So the chiyuv to pay for the meat was therefore nichlal. Therefore, the chayv happened during Shemitah and was cancelled. The cancellation of loans takes place at the end of Shemitah, at the end of the last day in Elul, meaning on the last day of the year of Shemitah. As long as the debt is incurred before the end of that day, it's cancelled when Shemitah ends. Although we learned in the previous Mishnah that a debt owed to shopkeeper for goods purchased is not cancelled by Shemitah, here where the meat was purchased from an ordinary person who's not a shopkeeper, it is cancelled. This is because an ordinary person does not usually sell on credit. When he sells something, he expects to be paid right away. If he's not paid right away, it's as if he agrees to lend the purchaser the money. The debt, the chayv, is thus considered a loan and is cancelled by shvius. V'im lav eina mishamit, but if Elul was not extended, it lasted for only 29 days, and the first day of Rosh Hashanah was truly the first day of Tishrei and the first day of the new year, the chayv is not cancelled because it was incurred after Shemitah had ended already. Ha'oinus v'amafata v'amoiti shemra v'chol ma'aseh Beis Din einin mishamtin. Oinus is someone who is ma'anas isha, or is mafata, talked a girl into marrying him. A man who violates an unmarried naira, a girl between 12 and 12 and a half years old, must pay a fine, a knas of 50 shekel to her father. That's if he's ma'anas her. If he's mafata her, convinces her, and she does it willingly, he must either pay her or pay a fine of, he must either marry her or pay a fine of 50 shekel. And one who's mighty shemra, if a husband falsely accuses his wife of being mezana between the kedushin and the sun, and brings edim, false witnesses to support this claim, he must pay a knas of 100 shekel. Kedushin and Nisun are the two ceremonies that make up a marriage. Kedushin, which usually consists of the man giving the woman an object of value, such as a ring, makes the couple halachically married in most respects, although they do not yet live together. Nisun, which usually consists of a chuppah ceremony, permits them to live together as husband and wife. In earlier time, Kedushin and Nisun were performed sometime apart, although nowadays they're performed one after another in a single ceremony. The chol ma'aseh Beis Din, or any debt, even a loan that's backed by a written court order from Beis Din, that is a creditor sued in court for a debt, the Beis Din ruled that he's owed the money, and they issued a written order that he's mechuyev to pay, so that is not cancelled during Shemitah. The fines are not cancelled because they are not loans, it's a fine. That's what how the Yerushalmi explains it. A chayv backed by the authority of a Beis Din is considered as though it was already collected, and only unpaid debts are cancelled by Shemitah. When a debt is backed by a Beis Din, the authority of the court guarantees that the person will pay up his chayv. Because it's considered as though the debt has already been collected. Since Shemitah cancels only unpaid chayvus, this chayv is not cancelled. Hamalva ala mashkin, if someone lends on a collateral, he's given an object that he can keep if the loan is not repaid. Or if a creditor gives his loan documents to the court for them to collect the loan for him, Einin Mishamtin, the loan is not cancelled because these cases do not meet the Torah's guidelines about which loans are cancelled. The pasuk says, "V'asher yiyeh lecha esachicha tashmeit yadecha." From that which you have by your brother, your hand shall cancel. This teaches that a loan is cancelled only when you, the lender, has money by your brother, the borrower. If the lender holds the borrower's collateral, your brother also has money by you. This case does not fit the guidelines of the pasuk, and the loan is therefore not cancelled. Similarly, if one gives the documents to Beis Din, it does not fit the description in the Torah, because it's not a chayv that you have. It's a loan that Beis Din has, since they are the ones responsible to collect the chayv. Mishnah Gimel. From this point to the next 5 Mishnahs, I can discuss the halachas of prusbul, which was a device instituted by the Chachamim, a form of a shtar that's written by a balchayv, by a creditor, which prevents loans from being cancelled by Shemitah. Prusbul eina mishamit. A loan for which a prusbul was written is not cancelled by Shemitah. And this is one of the things instituted by Hillel Hazak and Ksharash and Nimnu Amal Halvei, when he saw that people refrained from lending each other money, and Shemitah approached out of the fear that the loans would be cancelled and they would lose their money. And they were transgressing the Isser that's written in the Torah. Beware lest there are lawless thoughts in your mind, saying the 7th year is approaching, the year of cancellation, and you are stingy towards your needy brother, and you do not give him a loan, it will be a sin upon you. So Hiskin Hillel Prusbul, Hillel instituted a Prusbul so that people would have a means of protecting their loans and would not refuse to lend money. Prusbul is short for Prusbuli Buti, which means a solution for the rich and the poor. By means of a Prusbul, the rich can lend without fear of losing their money and will not transgress the Isser to refuse a loan, and the poor will find loans available. Although the cancellation of loans during Shvitas Ksafim is based on a pasuk, which Hillel did not have the authority to circumvent, in Hillel's time, the Torah's law of Shvitas Ksafim was no longer applicable. It was only Midrabanon that ordered the loans to be Mishamit. So Hillel and his Bezdin had the authority to institute a device that would bypass the cancellation. The Shmitas Ksafim applied by the Torah law only applies when Yovel is Noyeg, a period that ended towards the end of the Zman Bayis Rishon, and Hillel lived much later, close to the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. Mishnah Daled. Zehu Gufa Shel Prusbul. This is the essence of a Prusbul. The creditor says before a court of 3 judges, Meiser ani lachem ish pleni upleni hadayonim shebamakom pleni. I give to you so and so, the dayanim who are in such and such a place. That is, he says the names of the judges and the town. Shekol chayv sheyesh li she'egvenu kol zman she'ertze. Every debt that I am owed, so that I will be allowed to collect them whenever I wish. With this, the creditor submits his debts to the authority of the court. Since the court is not subject to the laws of Shmitas Ksafim, the chayiv is not cancelled by Shemitah. We learned in Mishnah Beis that if a creditor hands his loan documents to the Bezdin in order for them to collect the loans are not cancelled. The chiddush of the Prusbul is that through a simple declaration, a person can submit his chayvis to a Bezdin without actually handing over all his shtaros that he had for the past number of years. This declaration is recorded in a document. The judges or 2 witnesses sign at the bottom. It may be recorded in either of 2 ways. The judges write and sign that the creditor said the declaration before them, or 2 witnesses write and sign that they saw the creditor make the declaration before a Bezdin. Mishnah Hey, Prusbul HaMukdam Kasher. A Prusbul protects from cancellation only loans that were already made. It does not protect money that is lent after the Prusbul is made. Since a Prusbul document is used as proof of the Prusbul, it's important that the correct date be recorded in the document. So Prusbul HaMukdam Kasher, for predated Prusbul, if a person wrote a predated Prusbul, it's Kasher. For example, if a creditor makes a Prusbul in Kislev, but records the date as Tishrei, which is 2 months earlier, it's Kasher. With this inaccuracy, the creditor harms only himself, since he will not be able to use the Prusbul to collect loans made after Tishrei. In truth, the Prusbul protects all loans that were made before Kislev. However, the creditor will not be able to use it to collect any loans made after the date written in the Prusbul document, because he cannot prove that the Prusbul covers those loans. Since the creditor harms only himself by predating a Prusbul, it is Kasher from a Ucher Puzzle. However, a post-dated Prusbul is not valid because it can be used to collect debts unlawfully. For example, if one makes a Prusbul in Tishrei but records a date in Kislev, the creditor might use it to collect money that was lent in Cheshvan, which is not in fact protected by the Prusbul. Therefore, it is not valid, since the creditor can use this Prusbul to collect debts that it does not actually cover. The Chachamim declare the Prusbul pasul, and it doesn't protect any loans, not even those made before it was written. So it's almost like a knas, that because you're using one that doesn't have the right time, the Chachamim say it doesn't work at all, even for the time that it technically should work for. The Mishnah discusses another type of misdated document. For most loans, the lender has a lien on karka that the borrower owns at the time of the loan, even if he later sells the property. The lender uses the document that records the loan to collect from that property if the loan is not repaid. The Mishnah discusses halacha when the loan document is misdated. So predated loan documents are not valid to use to collect a lien, because they can be used to collect from karka that is not under a lien, such as property that the borrower sold before the loan took place. For example, if a loan took place at Kislev, but the document is dated Tishrei, which is 2 months earlier, the lender might use the document to show that the loan took place at Tishrei, and thereby collect from property that the borrower owned in Tishrei but sold in Cheshvan. Such property is not under the chayv, since the borrower did not own it at the time of the chayv, at the time of the halva. Since this shtar can be used unlawfully, the Chachamim declared it to be possible to collect any lien from at all. The shtar, however, can be used as proof of the loan. However, post-dated loan documents are valid to use to collect a lien because they cannot be used unlawfully. If a document is post-dated, the lender can use it to collect only from property that was still in the borrower's possession on the date written in the document. Since this merely limits the lender's options and cannot be used illegally against halacha, the document is valid and can be used to collect a lien. It's the lender, not the borrower, who makes the prusbul. And if one borrowed money from 5 people, a prusbul must be written by each creditor. Since the prusbul works by the creditor giving his debts to the bezdin, each creditor must write his own prusbul. However, if 5 people borrowed money from one person, he writes only one prusbul for all of them, because a single prusbul covers all the chayvus that were owed to him. Mishnah Vav. Ein kaisvim prusbul ela ala karka. We do not write a prusbul unless the borrower has land. If the borrower has land, the prusbul makes it as if the bezdin already holds the land mortgage to the loan before the Shemitah, and therefore the loan is not subject to Shemitah's ksafim. If the debtor has no land, the creditor can grant him a small amount of land within the creditor's own field, and a prusbul can be written based on that allotment. Even a piece of land so small that could only grow a single cabbage stalk is enough to guarantee the largest loan for the purpose of prusbul. Since land does not have a fixed value, even the smallest plot of land can theoretically be priced at the value of a large loan. If the debtor owns a field in the town that's being held by another creditor as security for a different chayv, we may still write a prusbul based on it. Even though this land cannot technically guarantee the loan, it's enough to allow a prusbul to be written for the loan. Reb Chutzpah says, we may write a prusbul for a loan made by a man based on property owned by his wife. This refers to property that a wife owned before her marriage. The halacha is that while this property belonged to the wife, her husband has the rights to benefit from it. For example, he may farm it and keep the produce. His right to this benefit allows us to view the land as his for the purpose of prusbul, even though there is a very strong side here that it's not his. But for prusbul, it does work. And for a loan made on behalf of orphans based on property owned by their guardian who borrowed the money for them. The court would appoint a guardian, the bezdin would appoint a apotropos to oversee the affairs of yisaimim who are ketanim. If the apotropos borrows money on their behalf, as long as the apotropos owns land, a prusbul can be written for the chayv, for the halva, even though the yisaimim, who are the ones who owe the money, they have no land. Even though they have no land, they can still write it. Although these pieces of land are not owned by the borrowers in the conventional sense, they suffice to allow prusbul to be written on them. Mishnah Zayin. Kaveras Dvarim. A beehive that rests on the ground. The halacha is that the halachas that apply to land differ in a number of ways from the halachas that apply to metaltlin. Meaning karka and metaltlin are different halachas. The Mishnah discusses whether certain metaltlin that rest on the ground have the status of metaltlin or karka with regard to prusbul and other halachas. This Mishnah also is in Uktin and mentioned elsewhere in Shas. So, kaveras dvarim, a beehive that rests on the ground. The Mishnah refers to a beehive that rests on the ground permanently. If it is attached to the ground, there's no suffix over here that's considered land with regard to all halachas. But this is resting on the ground, it's not attached to the ground. So Rebbe Lezer says it's considered as land and must be acquired with the methods used to acquire land, to be kainen, rather than the methods used to be kainen metaltalin. In order to transfer ownership of something from one person to another, a kinyan must be performed. Different acts are needed to acquire different things. Certain acts can be used to acquire metaltalin, while other acts must be used in order to acquire land, like the Mishnah explains in the first paragraph of Kedushin, Mishnah Daled and Hey. Similarly, if a debtor owns a beehive, he can write a prusbul based on it, just as if he owns land. It cannot contract tumah if it is in its place on the ground, namely if it's in a place where it's kept on a permanent basis. However, if it is moved or if it has no permanent place, it can become tameh. Just as land cannot become tameh, it's not makabel tumah. And someone who removes honey from it on Shabbos is chayev for uprooting something from the ground. The malacha of harvesting forbids uprooting something on Shabbos from a place where it grew on the ground. Rebbe Lezer learns this from a pasuk that honey in a beehive is considered to be growing there. Thus, removing honey from a beehive is detaching an item from the place where it grows and will be over on Koitzer. The Chacham say Eine Kekarka, Ve'ein Kozin Leha Prusbul, Umakabelas Tuma B'mkaima, V'hoidim Mimena B'Shabbos Potter. A beehive is not considered as land, but as metaltalin, and thus the kinyan is with a regular kinyan that you would use for metaltalin. Ve'ein Kozin Leha Prusbul. Similarly, we do not write a prusbul based on it since it's not considered land. Umakabelas Tuma B'mkaima. It can contract Tuma even if it is in its place, since metaltalin can be Makabel Tuma, and someone who removes honey from it on Shabbos is not chayiv, because it's not considered attached. Mishnah Ches. If someone tries to repay a debt after Shemitah has canceled it, that is, after Shemitah is over, since the cancellation of loans takes place at the very end of Shemitah, the creditor should tell him, I cancel the debt. If the debtor says, nevertheless, I wish to pay you, the creditor may accept the money from him. For the pasuk says, this is the matter of the cancellation, literally the word of the cancellation. The pasuk teaches that the cancellation, the Shemitah's ksafim, is fulfilled by the word of the creditor, the dvar hashmita, saying that he cancels the debt. Moreover, the use of the singular, this is the matter, rather than these are the matters, indicates that the creditor needs to say this only once. Once he says this, if the debtor insists on paying, the creditor may accept the money. Similarly, the Mishnah mentions a similar kind of drasha in a pasuk. This is a halacha in regard to a person who killed b'shogeg. Such a person had to go to Golus in Yermaklat. A number of cities throughout Eretz Yisrael and Ever HaYarden were designated as cities of refuge, or Transjordan is Ever HaYarden. A person who killed unintentionally under certain conditions was exiled to one of these cities and could not leave ad meis HaKohen Gadol, until the Kohen Gadol dies. So similarly, if an unintentional killer was exiled to a city of refuge, and the people of that city wanted to honor him, he must say to them, I am a killer and do not deserve honor. If they tell him, nevertheless, we still want to honor you, he may accept it from them. For the pasuk says, this is the matter, the word of the killer. This alludes to the fact that a killer needs simply to say what his status is. Once he has done that, if the townspeople insist, he may accept their honor. Here too, the singular, this is the matter, teaches that he needs to object only one time. Now the final Mishnah in the Masechta, Mishnah Tes, if someone repays a debt even though it was cancelled by Shemitah, he insists on paying even though the creditor cancelled it verbally as described in the previous Mishnah. The Chachamim are pleased with him. The Ruach Chachamim noicha himenu. Even though the loans are cancelled halachically, the Chachamim encourage people to go beyond the letter of the law and go to the Mishur Sadin and pay up all chayvus. Halevim and a ger and his rabban of imai. If someone borrows money from a ger whose children that were born to him as a goy converted together with him, he then converted and then he passed away, he died. Lo yachzir laban of the borrower does not have to return the money to the convert's children. When a person converts to Judaism, he's considered like a newborn child. Gershon is Gairs Kikatan Shanaylatami. Therefore, even if members of the family convert with him, they're not legally considered his Yarshim. Accordingly, the borrower does not have to pay the sons for the loan that was owed to their father. This halacha applies only to children born before the lender converted. Any children born to the convert from a Jewish woman after he converted are legally his Yarshim, and loans made by the ger must be repaid to them. But if he does return the money to the children, Ruach Chachamim neicha himenu, the Chachamim are pleased with him doing so. All movable objects are acquired by drawing them near to oneself, moving the object into one's possession. This is known as Mashiach. In fact, the movable objects can be acquired by other methods of physically taking possession, such as lifting the object or handing it over. The Mishnah mentions Mashiach because it's the method used for most things. It's interesting that we just mentioned this in the previous Mishnayos. In order to be kind of metaltalin, it's not enough to pay for it. It does not become the buyer's property until he physically takes hold of it. Until then, either party may back out of the sale. However, whoever keeps his word and does not back out of a sale agreement, even if the buyer did not yet do Mashiach, the Chachamim are pleased with him. Once a person verbally agrees to buy or sell something, the Chacham recommend that he not back out of the deal, even though he has a legal right to do so. Moreover, if the buyer has already paid for the object, although technically the deal is not complete until he physically takes hold of it and legally acquires it, the Chachamim pronounce a curse on a person who backs out of a sale after the money has been paid. Okay, we finished the 10th parak of Shvius. Hadron lachem second Shvius. Hadron chalon.